Hey, this is Robert Syvret of Syvret Music, and we are on part 7 of the drum programming editing tutorial video series. We just got done doing all the velocity editing for the entire song, and now we are moving on to the next step, of which is my workflow, and that involves the plugin itself. If you didn't catch one of my earlier videos, I used the Stephen Slate drums, and I will be showing you what I do within this and how I do all my routing for when it comes to printing down. So once you get a preset down, you want to go to Mixer, and you'll want to make sure that the pans, if you're doing separate stems, that is, for each one of the drum portions, are center. I'm doing this for myself because I don't record certain parts of the drums in stereo. I keep them all mono. And that's just a personal thing. It doesn't really affect the outcome of your mix or your song greatly. So you'll see that I first changed the ride to center and then moved it back, but that's because I route all of the cymbals to the overhead track, and so I want them to be panned because it's going to a stereo, and I want it to have that correct positioning when it gets into the stereo print down, which then goes into a mono print down, which I'll show in just a bit. So since this song has a ride portion throughout most of it, at least, I'm just going to bring up the ride on the volume. And I'm also going to bring up the hi-hat to unity. You can option click it, it'll go right to that. I didn't use any toms, but I'm still going to route them just for educational purposes. And I'm going to keep the mixing of the blended kick and snares if there might be a preset in the Stephen Slate drums that has multiple snares. In this instance, it's multiple kicks. So I'm going to keep them the same because I like the way they sound. Before I do the routing, I'm going to go to the bleed level, and I'm going to make sure that the hi-hat room and overheads is turned up, and the overhead and rooms on the snare is turned up. And on the ride, I'm going to make sure the room is turned up. So now for mixing, I'm actually going to bring the overhead and room faders up to unity. And I'm going to start over here at the kick. On the Stephen Slate drums, you have the bottom number here, which is the internal routing that's within the plugin. And you'll notice it has 16 outputs, 8 are mono, 8 are stereo. And so with the mono, I will select 9, starting with the kick. For all the kicks, I'll select 9. If you want to listen to each one and see which one's the kick in, or I guess it's to describe it better, is that's the punchier sound, where you get more of that beater click, and then the kick out, which is where you get that deeper, boomier kick sound. You can actually route those separately, but for me, I just keep them the same. And for snare top, I'll make that 10. Snare bottom, I make it a separate one, just because I like blending the level between the top and the bottom. Sometimes when I'm mixing, I'll put distortion on the bottom snare to give it more growl. Or another cool trick is to put a lot of reverb on the bottom snare only, so you get the snare top, which is the attack, and then the bottom, which is the sizzle, and you get a more sizzly reverb, which is cool. Now for how I have my auxes in Pro Tools set up, I like to keep a certain order, so I'm going to skip these toms and I'm going to set hi-hat to 12. And then I'll go through the toms and I'll set them accordingly: 13, 14, 15, then 16. So all the mono parts are set. What I do for the overheads, which are the cymbals, output 1 stereo is what's coming from this channel right here. So to get it to come out of other channels, it starts at 2. And you'll notice that once I show you the routing on the actual tracks themselves, the aux tracks is in Pro Tools. So I'm going to start on stereo 2 for all of these. And then overheads are going to be sent out stereo 2. And then rooms are going to be sent out stereo 3. So now we are all done with the Steven Slate drums. So I'm going to click out of that. And I have preset, well, I did have preset track names, but I'm just going to create them just to show you now what I do. So I did the quick key in Pro Tools, which is Shift-Command-N to create new tracks. I'm going to create 8 mono auxes, and then I'm going to create 2 stereo auxes. And I will explain to you why I did this shortly. But first, you want to make sure you name everything appropriately. I named this print because on the audio tracks, which the auxes are going to be routed to, I named them just kick and snare. And so I had the print there because you can't have multiple names within Pro Tools or any software DAW in that instance. So I'm just going through right now and labeling all these auxes. This is my workflow for printing down the drums. I know some people will do it through a stereo bounce and they'll have just a stereo track with the full drum mix. But I kind of, oh look, I even typed stereo. Way to go. But I like having the separation, like mixing a live drum kit. To me, it's more fun, and there's really no difference in sound. You could do all of your mixing within the plugin itself, as you saw with the mixer, but sometimes you might want to automate, and I've never tried automating with the Steven Slate sampler, but I'm pretty sure you might be able to. And so once you get down to the end of the track naming, I'm going to go and set the tracks to solo safed. So in case I solo this, these guys don't get muted. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cascade the inputs on all these tracks once I have them all selected. In Pro Tools, the quick key for that is Shift, Option, Command. So I'm going to click on the input of the kick track, go to Plugin. For this, my track is the Steven Slate plugin that I'm recording from is on Drum Rough. And I'm first actually going to start with just highlighting the mono tracks. I apologize. And I'm going to start on mono input 9. And as you can see, holding down the Shift, Option, Command buttons on the keyboard, it goes 9, 10, 11, 12, and then through 16, like how I have it routed in the plugin. Next, for the overhead and room, which are stereo, I'm going to set them as 2 and 3. As I stated before, stereo output 1 is on the actual instrument track that I have created. And so there we go. Now, you don't have to do this, but what I do just for, because I love the tone of it, I use Universal Audio Oxide tape. And I will put that on every track. I'm running a Universal Audio UAD2 satellite to help with the processing of the plugins, which can be tiresome to the unit, whichever you're running, depending on which one. So that's how I'm able to put a lot of these on at the same time. But for now, I'm just going to bypass these by holding down Shift, Option, Command in Pro Tools. And from here, I'm going to create 12 mono audio tracks. The reason why I have 2 stereo is because the overheads and the rooms in the plugin can only be routed out either stereo or mono, and you can't route out overhead left and right. But when I mix, I like having overhead left and right and room left and right. So what I'm going to do is just label the audio tracks. I'm still, see. So a clear example of what I stated earlier, if you don't have a different name, it's going to warn you. And I'd rather have the audio tracks have a simpler name to read and a shorter one. But as I was saying, there's no toms in this track, but I'm still going to record them down anyways just for educational purposes. So once I get to input 8, I'm going to actually name that hi-hat and then move that up because my mind got lost for a second there. And now starting at 9, I'm going to label that overhead left, overhead right, and then room left, room right. Now I'm going to go back up to my aux tracks, and I'm going to cascade with the quick key shift option command on kick, and I'm going to start on first by unhighlighting these, and I'm going to start on bus 1, and it's going to stop at bus 8. The reason why I stopped there is because I'm going to cascade a stereo output for the overhead and the room, 9 and 10, 11 and 12. Now when it comes down to here, watch what happens when I cascade the kick starting at bus 1. 9, 10, which is left and right on overhead, and then 11 and 12, which is left and right on room. And then I'm going to press Shift R, or you can click the record button to record arm it. And you're ready to print down. So something you don't have to follow, but what I do is I do Beat Detective. And if you haven't seen my other video, I'll explain it again. You press Command 8, or you can go up to, I believe it's in the options window or event window. I forget which one. I always press Command 8 on the numeric keypad if you have a full keyboard. And it'll pull up Beat Detective. Long story short, it reads the transients in the audio clip and it adds a marker on those transients. I'm going to select 16th note for selection under the bar and beat marker generation. And I'm going to capture the selection. I'm going to go to keep enhanced resolution because low emphasis is, it doesn't have that much of a sensitive touch when it comes to selecting the markers on certain transients, and high emphasis means that there will be more markers because the emphasis on the transients will be higher, as it is self-explained. But I keep it on enhanced resolution. I'm going to press Analyze. You're going to see that go. I will select subbeats to keep the change more specific, and I will generate. Keeping the sample positions, though, because you don't want to move any of your pre-recorded audio tracks. And press OK. And then when you press record, so you notice that the snare top records pretty hot. So a great thing about sending through aux is not only because you can process through plugins, but for each separate one, but you can also control the level going into the audio track. So if it's coming out hot from here, instead of messing around with the levels in the plugin, it's easier to do it out here. And you just bring these down however much you want. And it will control the level being recorded. So you can see the levels are a little bit lower now. So there's that. I might not have explained, but I use Beat Detective because when you're following the tempo that is set from Beat Detective, which was first inspired by the bass performance that I did. It gives a more realistic touch because when you have a set BPM, you're set to a certain grid, but then when you're following, say the drummer recorded to a bassist, a human bassist who recorded to a click, he's not going to always be exactly on. So following these little quirky movements in the tempo is going to add this huge difference to the track itself in the long run. And it's just going to make the drums sound a little bit, to me, more human. And it will add mistakes, which you will hear, which is normal for a drummer because not everyone can be perfect. And it just, I don't know, to me, I like the way it sounds better than without having Beat Detective there. I'm sure other DAWs have a Beat Detective feature, but I'm more versed in the Pro Tools universe, and I don't believe many others have a Beat Detective. I believe Logic has something similar to it, but I'm not too certain, and don't quote me on that. But as you can see here, there's kind of like a crazy difference. So let's actually listen to this portion. Alright, doesn't sound that bad to me. And last but not least, whenever I record, I always bring the buffer size down to around 64, just so there isn't a delay when recording down. And that's basically it then. So thanks for watching this video series, and if you guys have any questions, leave comments down below, and like the video, share it with anybody you know who can take advantage of this information. Like I said before, this is not the only way to do this, and I'm not saying that I'm right by doing this, and there might be better ways, and I'd be interested to know what you guys do and what programs you guys use. And I would love to hear some of your samples as well of your own drum programming. And that concludes this tutorial video series. Any other tutorial kind of videos that you guys might be interested in, whether it be guitar tone capturing or bass printing or just anything, let me know. Either go visit my website, which is www.syvretmusic.com, or go to facebook.com/syvretmusic and send me a message through Facebook or my website, and let me know what you guys would like to learn next. I also do private videos for people where I've had people send in their songs and I would mix it for them, and I would do a video so I could show them what I've done specifically, and they usually really get a lot out of that. And I will use plugins, and if somebody's never had certain plugins before, I'll say you should probably get this because it's a great plugin. Usually it's the Waves Gold bundle, which is a great beginner plugin bundle, and I'll use plugins from that, kind of demoing them and almost showcasing them and how it changes for the song. And just little tips and tricks that I have. I can also do videos for how I set up my sessions, and I can show you how I set up my mix sessions, and anything that might help you out, speed-wise in the future, maybe setting up session templates and whatnot. So, just let me know, and yeah, thanks again for watching, and I hope this helps someone out. Peace.